Hello YouTube, and welcome to this ultimate guide to productivity. I put pretty much almost every single thing that I can think of that has helped me become more productive into this one guide, so I hope you will appreciate it. I hope you will enjoy and learn things that you can implement into your own life to become much more productive. That being said, this is going to be an extremely long guide, possibly the longest video I've ever recorded. So sit back, relax, and be ready to learn. So part 1 is psychology, and I put this at the very first because psychology is so important. It's probably the most important factor if we're talking about productivity. It's how you think about doing things. Right? So with psychology, you have to have some competitiveness. In high school, I remember being one of those people who didn't really care at all about school, about doing like homework, about just doing work in general. I was never one of those extremely hard workers, at least for school. On the other hand, I was extremely hardworking when it came to video games. I would research all about getting this like one item, the best strategies for this one game. I was so motivated for these games, and yet that wasn't the case for school. And even then, I had a competitive drive. I wanted to be the best at the things I cared about. And of course, during that time, I didn't care about school. What I did care about was video games. I cared about playing Minecraft. I cared about playing Clash Royale. I cared about these things instead. And so, in order to be the most productive, you must have a competitive drive in you. Because if you don't, you won't be the 1% that implements every single thing. Now, do you need to implement every single thing? No, you don't. Alright? You don't. But if you want to be the most productive, you must have a competitive drive. And with this, you have to have a why, first and foremost. Right? You must have a reason to be productive. Nietzsche says, "A man who has a why can bear any how." And so I ask you, why do you want to be more productive? Why are you doing these activities? Why do you study? Just why? Is it out of a drive? Is it out of ambition? Like, do you want to be valedictorian? Do you want to be better than every other person in your class? Do you want to be the best student in your school? Are you that competitive? Do you have that drive? Or is it out of fear? Is something dragging you along? Right? Is something lurking behind you, pushing you on? Right? Is it your parents? Is it societal standards that are urging you to do well in school? Is it that? Whatever the case, either one works. It can be fear, it can be ambition. It really does not matter where your why comes from. As long as you have it. As long as you have a why, that's all that matters. And in fact, the best case scenario is where you have both. Is where you're extremely ambitious and you have fear as well. That is the best case scenario, because what ends up happening when you have both is that you are pushing yourself along and fear is making you accelerate even more. And so that's just going to help doubly. The next part is your identity. Are you someone who is productive? Do you identify as a productive person? The thing is, you need to have a productive identity. You need to trust that you are productive. Not some like flimsy whimsy like, "Oh, I believe I'm productive." Nothing about belief. You have to know it. To capitalize on this, you have to actually be productive beforehand, which is kind of interesting given that this is a guide to be more productive. But in order to maximize this guide, you need to already be somewhat productive. You can't just start from 0 and expect to go to 100. In order to get the best results, you need to already think of yourself as someone who is productive. I am someone who does work. I am someone who gets things done on time. I'm someone who gets things done early. I have a schedule to do my work. I have a schedule to study. I am a productive person. And an analogy I'm going to make is with the people who lose weight and keep it off. The people who lose weight and keep it off don't do so simply by behavior change. It's by changing their identity. The thing is, with losing weight's not hard. It's keeping the weight off that is hard. Most people, when they lose weight, they just regain it back or even gain even more. The people who lose the weight and then keep it off are those who make changes to their identity, changes to how they see themselves. They no longer see themselves as this person who eats junk food, who doesn't go to the gym. No. They see themselves as, I am healthy. I am a person who takes care of my physical self. I'm someone who goes to the gym. I watch what I eat. I am that kind of person now. I'm no longer the person I used to be. It's these kinds of people with their identity change that succeed the most. And it's extremely powerful. Belief effects are real. Just think about the placebo effect, or even the nocebo effect. Belief effects affect you drastically. And you have to be able to trust, to know that you are a productive person in order to be the most productive. Part 2 is pressure. And this is absolutely required. Like the quote, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Comfort leads to inaction, and absolute comfort leads to nothing. So, back in high school, I remember all these summers where there was nothing to do because, school's over, right? So, it's just free time, hallelujah, bro. It's like, you get all the time to yourself now. No more school. You can bet your ass that I was not productive whatsoever. Why? I had no reason to. There was no pressure to do so. There was nothing making me be productive. Therefore, of course, you can already guess what I did. I already played tons and tons of video games, watched tons of anime, watched tons of YouTube, all that stuff, right? I didn't have any pressure to not do so. There was no reason for me to even work, because there was no work. There was no pressure. And for you to be productive, you absolutely have to have pressure. And this goes back to fear. Is fear the thing that is pressuring you to be productive, to do the work, to study? Or are you putting pressure on yourself? Is the pressure coming from external things, from your parents? Where is your pressure coming from? And with that comes the question, which is better? External or internal pressure? If you look at most rich people got there because of fears of insufficiency, of insecurity, of imposter syndrome. They felt they weren't good enough, and so they needed to make it so that their external world was so much greater, so that they could finally validate themselves through these external things. And the thing is, that doesn't actually validate them, but that's a different topic. And so your internal pressures are things that spur you to action. And if you look at the most rich people, the hyper successful people, there are 3 key traits that they all have. And it's a belief in your own superiority, it's a crippling insecurity, and it's the ability to delay impulses, or impulse control. And insecurity being one of those 3 is not a mistake. Insecurity is a key factor in how people become hyper successful. It's because of it that drove them to seek such achievement. They couldn't be satisfied with anything else. It was always needed for them to do better than everyone else, to do more, to achieve more, to keep on going, to never get worse. On the flip side, if you look at people who are only pushed or only pressured by external pressures, just look at poor people, right? Poor people, or people living in poverty, they have this external pressure that is literally like, you cannot survive. You are on the street. You don't have a home. You are begging for money. And when you think about them, how many of them actually become billionaires? Literally no one. No one. Why? Because when you are motivated by external pressures, you work enough to be satisfied. And that's it. You don't have this desire to go above and beyond everyone else. You just work until those external pressures are satisfied. And you're good. And that's the reason external pressures don't work. Because with external pressures, you can always release the valve. And I mean that by when the external pressure is satisfied, it's gone. With internal pressures, with your crippling insecurity, you're never going to get rid of it by becoming a billionaire. You won't. It won't solve your crippling insecurities. It won't solve your imposter syndrome. It won't do any of that. And of course, that is a part of being mentally healthy, right? But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is so that you can become the most productive that you can possibly be. And if you're insecure, you might as well use it to your advantage, like I've done. And so furthering pressure releases, there's lots of them, right? Orgasm, video games, social media, YouTube, like so many other dopamine releasing activities. These are all things that relieve yourself, that make you feel good, right? And you can think of pressure as a sort of frustration, and it's best noticed with like sexual frustration, right? When you don't orgasm for like a week or two, you are hypersexual. You are extremely frustrated. You want to release this pressure inside of you. And of course, there are times to do that. I'm not saying that you should abstain for your entire life. Right? That's not realistic. There are going to be times when you have to release because it's going to be too much. Right? There's going to be times when it is simply too much. On the other hand, there are times when you can use this energy, you can use this frustration to hammer things out, to get work done. Right? You can use this energy for another purpose, to be more productive. And hence why a lot of nofap YouTubers will tell you they became more productive when they went on nofap. And if you want to be more productive, you should go on nofap too. I'm not saying that you should or should not. I'm simply saying that orgasm is one of those pressure releases, and having pressure is a vital part of being the most productive that you possibly can. At the same time, completely abstaining all the time will be detrimental at some point in time, because it just gets to the point where you're constantly thinking about it, right? And that doesn't help you become more productive, right? So there are times to release and there are times to not. And on to the ideal situation of relieving pressure. The best time to relieve this pressure, whatever it is at the end of the day, only when you have achieved and accomplished everything you wanted to do. And this is so that you only get your reward after you've done things. And this is basically positive reinforcement, right? You do something and then you reward yourself for it. And basically that reinforces your desire to do that thing to get that reward. If you keep it like this, keep the work first, then reward second, you'll keep the loop going. If you reverse it, if you get the reward first and then try to do the work next or second, it's going to be a lot harder because you don't have a reward after doing the work. You've already gotten your dopamine release, right? You are less motivated to do work, to be productive. And that is why you should always reward yourself at the end of a day's work. And a caveat to that is you shouldn't always reward yourself. Rather, you should sparse it out, right? You shouldn't reward yourself every single time. You shouldn't reward yourself every single day, but rather somewhat make it kind of random, you know? And so there are basically schedules for rewards in psychology. 2 of them are random reward scheduling and fixed reward scheduling. And so fixed reward scheduling is basically, okay, I do this thing, I get reward. And that's it, right? I do thing, get reward, do thing, get reward. Random reward scheduling is, I do thing, maybe I get reward. You know, I do thing once, I don't get reward. I do it twice, I get a reward. Thrice, I get a reward. 4 times, I don't get a reward. And this is very commonly used in casinos. And it's ultimately better because it's way more addicting. It's way more addicting to have something random. It releases dopamine because it's novel, right? You don't know for sure if you're going to get a reward or not. Hence why casinos and slot machines are so addicting. You don't know when you're going to get it, but you know you eventually will. And who knows how much money you'll be drained of before then. And so to use this in your actual life, in your actual productive life, reward yourself randomly, you know? After a day's work, you know, randomly. Today, I won't reward myself. Tomorrow, maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I shall see. Right? By utilizing this random reward system, you're sort of basically like tricking your brain in a way to be more compelled to be productive so that you can possibly get this reward. Part 3 is discipline. And discipline is absolutely required as well if you want to be productive, at least for the majority of the time. And a lot of this is coming from the book Atomic Habits that I believe that you should read, but I'll basically be summarizing the 4 points in the book, in this guide, alright? And so in the book Atomic Habits, it teaches you how to build a habit and also how to get rid of a habit. And so the 4 concepts for building habits, and if you want to get rid of a habit, you just reverse it. The 4 of those is make it obvious, make it easy, make it rewarding, and make it attractive. Right? If you have these 4 things, you are almost guaranteed to make something a habit. And so when you're trying to be productive, what does making it obvious mean? It means having your desktop or laptop or whatever thing set up so that you can see all your productive apps, so that you can see all the tasks you have to do immediately. You have it right in front of you. You're constantly being reminded of it. It's extremely obvious. The second is making it easy. And so what that looks like is that it is an easy time for you to, set up everything, to start working immediately, If you're working at a desk, you already have everything set up. You just need to sit down, the tab's already open, and you can just go. By making it rewarding, I've already told you about rewards, about pressure releases, right? When you do the habit, reward yourself. But, like I've already said, don't do it every single time. You want to have some randomness to it in order to get the best results. And the 4th is making it attractive. How can you associate positive feelings with this activity? For me, whenever I do certain tasks or finish certain tasks, I just think, all right, that's great. Great job. It was tough, but you did it. I'm proud of doing this. Right? You want to associate positive feelings with being productive. So by using these 4, I don't know what to call it, like techniques or ideas on how to ingrain new habits, this is like sort of the rubric or the blueprint of how to add habits so that you can become more productive. A key part of having discipline, especially when it comes to productivity, is killing procrastination, right? Procrastination is something that every single person has done at least once in their entire life, if not today, if not in the last hour, right? It's almost universal. Everyone does it, right? And if you want to be productive, this is something that you have to minimize, if not try to eliminate completely. The one tip I'm going to give you for procrastination is simply a question or a series of questions that you're going to ask yourself. And they are, how much work are you going to add to your future self? How much is tomorrow's self, how much is tomorrow's you going to regret what you didn't do today? How much is tomorrow's you going to dislike you at the moment? Right, because whenever you procrastinate, you leave it up to future you to do things. And future you is, well, it could be tomorrow's you. It could be you in a week. But whenever that you comes, you're not going to be happy. Alright, you're going to think back, why didn't I do this earlier? Why didn't I? And then you remember, oh, right, I procrastinated. Right. Yeah. And so whenever you want to procrastinate, you probably won't even think about it to begin with. So I'd really recommend just writing on like a post-it note and just like slapping it on the wall so that you can just see it. So like, whenever you procrastinate, you just look up or something, or or just on your desk. If you procrastinate and you look on your desk, you just see it like, how much are you gonna regret procrastinating? How much is tomorrow's you going to blame you? It's just, this question allows you to take a step back. It allows you to see what you're actually doing. It allows you to see that you are literally taking work that needs to be done today and putting it onto your future self. And whenever you can see what you're doing for your future self, it makes things a lot easier to not procrastinate, because you are thinking about the consequences of procrastinating. You're thinking about what's going to happen when you procrastinate. And for the most part, we end up procrastinating because there's no resistance to that train of thought. We think, I'm just gonna do this tomorrow because I don't really want to do it right now, and that's it. Right? We don't really think about what is this going to do to me tomorrow. We don't. And once we do, procrastinating becomes easier to manage. It becomes easier to eliminate. The final part of discipline I'm going to talk about is goals. Just like asking yourself the questions for procrastination, you want to write down your goals and put them somewhere where it's obvious to see, so that you can always be reminded of what your goal is, especially during times of challenge, especially when you're having a hard time and you are just so tempted to give in. Especially during those times, you put your goal on a sticky note or something, you put it on the wall, and then you just see it again, and then you just think, this is all for that goal. This is all because of that. I'm doing this, I'm suffering because of that. And once I achieve it, it's going to be spectacular. And this also ties into Atomic Habits rule number 1, which is making it obvious, right? You have it on your wall, it's obvious to see, there you go. And another part of goals is gamification. It's basically how you're going to track progress. The thing is, a lot of people, including myself, are addicted to video games because of the sense of progression. We work at the game in order to improve and to get better items, to get better stats, to level up, etc. It's for that sense of progression. And we love that. Right? We love the improvement. And you certainly need it if you want to be productive. You need that sense of progression if you are to be able to stick to this routine, to this ideal. You need to be able to track your progress so that you know you're improving. And so just like video games, you need to come up with sort of like stats or things that you can track that tell you that you are actually progressing. And when you do this, life becomes a video game. And if you like video games as much as I do, you know that if life actually becomes a video game, it becomes addicting to play. It becomes addicting to actually be active in your life. Instead of being passive, instead of letting things do things on their own, actually actively playing a role in your life, actually being present in life in a way that you are intentional. Because I think a lot of us go through life without intention. We go through life, okay, we come back, And then we want to go into this virtual world because that has a sense of progression that is not found in the real world. Now, if we have that in the real world, we wouldn't be looking for it in a virtual one, right? And so, gamify your progress. Gamify your productivity. And for one, that'll just make it a lot more attractive, which goes back to the, Atomic Habits, make it attractive, and you'll do it, right? Part 4 is having a task list. And I think that you have to have like a task list or a schedule in order to organize the things that you need to do every single day. Otherwise, the things just won't get done. And you may have heard of Parkinson's law. And so Parkinson's law is basically the work that you do will expand to fill the amount of time allotted for it. It's why so many of us will like procrastinate doing an essay until like the very last like 2 or 3 days and then just finish it in that blitz and then we'll be done. Because work expands to take the time allotted. If you are given 2 weeks to do it, you'll get it done in those 2 weeks. You won't get it done the first day. You'll get it done in those 2 weeks. And most likely it'll be done on the very last day. And so by scheduling things out, by scheduling when you do certain things, by allotting certain days to do certain things, you are manipulating Parkinson's law, right? You are telling yourself, I'm only giving myself this much time to do this, therefore I will do it, I will get it done. And by manipulating Parkinson's law, you can actively boost your productivity. And within businesses, there's the common phrase, eat the frog first. And this basically means do the most challenging thing first. Whether this be studying for an exam, whether this be making notes, whether this be whatever, right? Do the hardest thing first. Because chances are, you're not going to be willing to do it later in the day. Even though, right now, you might want to procrastinate, right? First thing in the morning, you might not want to do things, right? You're going to want to procrastinate. But what's the likelihood of you actually doing it later in the day? It's probably lower. Unless the deadline's extremely close, right? And certainly this ties into another concept called ego depletion. And ego depletion is sort of the concept that your willpower decreases over the day, over the course of the day, over the many decisions that you make in a day. And certainly people are not able to control themselves as much in the later parts of the day as in the beginning of the day. And this is especially seen with eating food. Right? It's a common trope that, when people snack at night, they snack a lot in comparison when they snack in the day. So you want to eat the frog first. You want to do the most difficult thing, the most challenging thing first in the day. And then you can scale down in difficulty, this is the most challenging, okay, got that done first, second most, then third, then fourth, and then you just go down that ladder until at the very end of the day, you're just doing simple, small tasks. Now, you don't need to do that ladder like perfectly, certainly I don't. To be honest, I also violate this. For some days, I don't eat the frog first just because of external circumstances, but I eventually get it done. And at the same time, it takes me more willpower to do the most difficult thing later in the day. If I could do it first thing in the morning, I would do it because that would save me a lot of willpower that could be used for other things. And so tying this into like a daily schedule, you want to basically plan out exactly at what time you're going to be doing what. Now for me personally, I take a more liberal stance on this. I take more, these can be estimates, they don't need to be exact, right? But you should know pretty much when you're doing what at what time of the day, right? And so for me, it depends on the day due to like extra activities and like my class schedule and whatnot. But the baseline for my day is basically I wake up at 5 a.m. Right? I study, I do some work at 5:30. I go to the gym at 7, and then I have class at 10. I eat lunch at 12 or 1, and then I work again or study until 4. I eat dinner, and then I work again from like 5 until 8, where I wind down, and then at 9 I sleep. I know the basic structure of what I'm doing in a day. Now, are there variations? Of course there are. There are going to be days when I have lighter work and, I have free time. And there are days when I have more work where I will need to put more hours, I will need to take hours away from, or I will need to take time away from certain things and delegate that to working, right? But overall, you need to basically know exactly what you're going to do for all of your waking hours. Otherwise, like Parkinson's law says, you're going to fill it with the most easy thing to do. And that's probably going to be video games, that's probably going to be YouTube, that's probably going to be TikTok. And if you want to be productive, that is not something you want, right? So you need to have a conscious effort about what you are doing every hour of your waking day. Part 5 is meditation, and I put this in because meditation is actually quite useful when it comes to productivity. And I'll tell you why. The first part that I'm going to talk about is focusing meditation. And so focusing meditation is basically where you practice your focus, right? It's the meditation where you focus on your breath. You try to not think about any thoughts, but the thing is, thoughts are going to come in anyway. So instead, when those thoughts come in, you try your best to go back to your breath. Right? There's meditations that have you looking at a candle as long as you can. There's meditations that have you looking at a point in space for the entire time, just trying to stick your eyes on that point for the entire time and not lose focus of it, right? So those are focusing meditations, and this ties into the concept of deep work. And deep work is the ability to work so well that it outcompetes all the other kinds of work. And so focusing meditation allows you to basically focus. That's the entire point. It allows you to get into deep work. And basically deep work is simply experiencing the flow. You may have heard of the flow. It's basically where time speeds up or time slows down, and you're just so encompassed in this one task. All of your attention is on it, and you just feel amazing. It just feels great in that moment. You are fully in the present, just working on this thing. That's the flow, and that is what we want when you're actually working. We want the deep work because it outcompetes all the other kinds of work. Like, there were times when I was working and studying with a TV show in the background, and looking back at it now, 1 hour of my deep work right now is comparable to like 3 to 4 hours of that kind of work. It's so much better, and it's why I don't study as much as other people. At least I think so. That's just my opinion. I don't actually know, but I think I study less than other people. And so you want to do focusing meditation so that you can get better at bringing your mind into the present so that you can get into the flow and get some deep work in. The second type of meditation is spreading attention. So it's basically the polar opposite of focusing. You're basically trying to have your attention spread out and dispersed. Right? It's like it's the meditations where you feel certain things. You're sitting on a chair, and then you're just feeling your feet. You're feeling your butt. You're feeling your legs on the chair. You're feeling your neck. You're feeling your arms at your sides. You're just feeling everything. And the reason why this is so important is because you need to have recovery time. Your brain can't always be on and stimulated. It has to have recovery time. You need to let loose. And no, this is not the conventional letting loose as in like watching movies or TV shows. That is not letting your brain rest. You're simply doping yourself up with dopamine so that it feels good. But you aren't actually letting the neural circuitry, you're not letting your brain actually take a rest and recuperate when it is possibly the best thing you can do so that you can get another work bout in. So to reiterate, the types of meditation you want to do are focusing and spreading your attention. Right? Basically, one is trying to focus and diverting your attention away from the thoughts you get to this one point in time. And the other is the polar opposite. It's just allowing your thoughts to flow. Part 6 is physical activity, and you may wonder, why is physical activity a part of a productivity/mental guide? Right? Why? Well, that's because physical activity enhances your productivity. physical activity is a must for anyone wanting better activity, better productivity. And anyone who goes to the gym can testify to this. After coming back from the gym, your productivity is at its all-time high. Physical activity releases endorphins and a whole bunch of neurotransmitters and chemicals. It just makes you feel a lot better during the moment, but it also enhances your cognitive ability after. And that's why you should absolutely do physical activity. And so part of physical activity is cardiovascular training and strength training. Both will help you with your cognitive abilities. Both will help you become more productive. And this isn't even like about the part where you practice discipline, where you practice going to the gym all the time, where you stick to a schedule. It's not even about that. And well, that will help you with your own discipline with productivity. But like physical activity in general will just help you become more productive, just solely because of what it is. Part 7 is food. And because this is a guide about increasing your productivity to the max, the things I'm about to say might contradict some things that you know or you think. Alright? And so the big point about food is you don't want to work immediately after consuming big meals or a lot of food, right? Or a lot of carbs, because you will get brain fog. You know, if you've ever tried to do this, right? You eat a lot of carbs or eat a really big meal and then you just can't think as well. You can't think as efficiently. It's just not as good as if you were on an empty stomach. So if you want to maximize your productivity, do work not after you eat, but before it. Right? It's sort of like rewarding yourself, you know? You do your work and then you reward yourself with food. Right? It's, once again, positive reinforcement. And something that works really well for me is intermittent fasting, because I work mostly in the mornings. So I just get all that work done. And I also fast in the morning and I eat in the noon till early evening. And I found that boosts my work abilities so much more than if I were to eat food when I'm working. Part 8 is sleep. And I've talked about sleep so many times because so many people ignore it and don't put that much value on it, when I think that it is possibly the most important thing you could ever do. Why? Because we sleep for a third of our lives, and if that's not important, if that doesn't show how important sleep is, I don't know what does, man. Because like, we are immobilized, we're defenseless for 8 hours of a day, for a third of our days, for a third of our lives. There must be some good reason, evolutionarily speaking, why that has not been eradicated. You know, why do basically all mammals sleep? Because it is necessary, because it is absolutely beneficial for you. Studies have shown that your cognitive ability becomes impaired if you don't get sufficient sleep. And there was one study that was comparing your driving abilities after not having one night of sleep compared with blood alcohol levels, and it basically found that you are just as, if not more, impaired than being drunk, than being slightly intoxicated. All right, just think about that. Your mental capabilities are just as impaired as if you were slightly drunk. And if you're here to have good productivity, you know that your mental capabilities are extremely important. So for sleep, you want to have consistency. You want to have, this is the time you go to sleep, and this is the time I wake up. Right? You want to have it consistent. The second part that ties into consistency is having a bedtime routine. For me, my routine is an hour at night, and also technically like 30 minutes in the morning, because I value it a lot. I value it a lot. And so you don't need to have an hour bed routine. You just have to have some bed routine so that you can prepare yourself for sleep. And so some quick notes about your bedroom routine. Basically, before you go to sleep, you want to turn off all the bright lights if possible, so that your body can start releasing melatonin. Melatonin being the hormone that basically makes you feel sleepy and drowsy. Hence why when you have bright lights on during the night, you aren't as sleepy as if they were off. And I've used this for probably 2 years now, 2 to 3 years now, and it's worked wonders. Right. Part 9 is supplements. And so the supplements I'm going to go over are things that can boost your cognitive ability. And so the first one is caffeine. I think we all know this. Caffeine boosts your cognitive ability, also boosts your physical abilities. Caffeine is a stimulant which does all these and is basically your staple. Right? Everyone consumes caffeine in some way, shape or form, pretty much. The second is your omega-3 fatty acids. And these will also boost your mental capabilities. It'll boost lots of things like your skin. It'll boost your health as well. Omega-3s are probably one of the most researched supplements that you can take that we know have a benefit. And so these two are the things that I use personally for mental abilities. And certainly there are other ones that are on the market that you can buy, but if you have the money, you can use it. Personally, I don't use it because I just don't have the money, man. And even if I did, do I really need it? Probably not, at least so far. But these are just things that you can get if you really want to supplement and get the maximum performance, but it's not necessary. Right? So these are alpha GPC, L-tyrosine, L-theanine, huperzine A, saffron extract, bacopa manuri, and acetyl L-carnitine. Right? These are 7 things that you can just search them online, and there will be nootropic formulas that will have at least a couple of these. Like most nootropics will definitely have alpha GPC, L-tyrosine, L-theanine, probably acetyl L-carnitine. Like most of these will be in your standard nootropics that are actually good, right? Not like your cheap mass-produced nootropics. Like these are your quality nootropics, right? So you can supplement these. Personally, I don't, but you'll probably find some benefit with these. Part 10 is limiting distractions, and this is a very, very big one. And it's especially with content, with YouTube, with TikTok. If you are watching that stuff when you're working, just know you're actively hindering your ability to be productive. All right? Listen, I've done it in the past, and now that I don't, it's a night and day difference, right? But not just when you're working, also when you are not working, right? Because if you allow yourself to have these when you're not working, you're basically giving yourself free dopamine. Right? Now, if you are doing this at the end of the day, I'd say it's kind of fine. If you're doing it before, probably not the best idea, given that you're basically rewarding yourself before you do the work. And I've already said that is not. If you want to be the most productive, you should always reward yourself after you've done the work. Right. And so instead, if you want to take a break, replace that time with journaling, with reading, with working on something else. You want to do something that is not releasing all of this dopamine, right? Because that's basically just rewarding yourself. And so another part of distractions, specifically content, is not being sucked in. I'm sure we all know this. We go on a certain platform that we think we're just going to go on it for a minute or two, and then we spend 30 minutes to an hour on it. And so we want to avoid this as much as possible if we want to be the most productive. So basically, you definitely want to disable any autoplays. You do not want recommendations. Right? Specifically for YouTube, there are extensions that I use to block out the likes, the views, the thumbnails, the recommendations, even the homepage. I streamline my YouTube experience so that I'm only getting my subscriptions because that's how I limit the distraction that YouTube provides for me. Right? I go to YouTube for the purpose to look at my subscriptions, to see which videos I'm interested in, and only to watch them, and nothing else. And so you want to do this with the platforms that you use. YouTube, like I already said, there are extensions to do so. The ones I use are DFTube, hide latest performance, hide YouTube thumbnails, and hide YouTube viewers and ratings. And so you want to limit the amount of time you spend on these distracting platforms. You want to limit the time you spend on these things because you want to use the time to be productive. Or at least that's the goal. Part 11 is about the phone. And we all have a smartphone now, and the phone is definitely a distraction. Right? The less time that you can get on your phone, the better. Right? You absolutely want to spend the least amount of time on your phone because it is a hyper distraction. And I'll get into the ways of how to limit your phone distractions. The first is Grayscale. And so I've tried this recently for a couple months now, and it's quite nice. And I'm honestly kind of like weirded out when I don't see a screen in Grayscale. It's like I turn it, so like there are times when I need to differentiate between colors specifically, or I need to identify certain colors. And so I turn off Grayscale, and then I'm just bombarded with colors, and I'm just thinking like, this looks so weird. What the hell, man? And so I just turn it back on immediately after because it's so weird and it's so vibrant, and I'm just not used to it anymore. But that's my experience. But Grayscale basically eliminates a lot of the dopamine that you get from just staring at your screen. Right? If you're going to be looking at the screen anyway, you might as well limit the amount of dopamine you're getting just from the colors. Right? And that in itself will make your phone less addicting. The second is adding a time widget. For me, I just add like a widget that says, oh, how much time I've been on my phone, and boom, instant reminder about how much time I'm on it and that I shouldn't go on it so much. Easy. Third is deleting social media and games from it. Right? This is the biggest contributor to the time. If you aren't on social media on your phone, if you aren't playing games on your phone, you're probably not going to use your phone like at all, like over 2 or 3 hours in a day. And so if you want the best productivity, delete social media, delete video games from your phone. The fourth is also another one that I did recently, and it's disable the tap to wake and raise to wake functions. And so this is basically, you tap your phone and then it wakes up, or you raise it up and then it wakes up, right? And the thing is, when these are on, it's so much easier to just swipe up. Oh, let's see what's in Instagram. Let's see let's see what's in my email. Right? Because of the ease of access, you're much more likely to be sucked in again. Right? So we want to eliminate that distraction. So when we want to turn on our phone, it has to be when we push the power button on. Right? So that makes using the phone intentional. And so all of this is to say your phone is a phone. You should use it as a phone, a device that allows you to communicate with other people. Stop using your phone as a smartphone, even though it is a smartphone, most likely, right? By doing this, you can allow yourself to be the most productive, to limit the distractions that the phone is giving you. And believe me, it's like a billion things all the time, man. It's so distracting. On the flip side, you can also have multiple phones. If you can have multiple phones, right? Instead of having one phone for everything, you can split it up. You can have a work phone, you can have like a personal phone, you can have like a phone with all your dopaminergic activities, your social media, your YouTube, your TikTok, your video games, etc. By splitting things up, you're basically limiting your ability to get sucked in. Right? Your work phone, okay, I just only check this phone for work. I checked work, done. Personal phone, done. And then play phone. Alright, ding ding ding, let's go. But having multiple phones allows you to not be sucked in as much. Now there's also your phone during the work time. And the thing is, your phone should not be anywhere near you when you are working whatsoever. It should not be near you whatsoever. At least you shouldn't even be able to see it. Right? Just having your phone within eyesight is distracting because you're basically reminding yourself that, oh, something new could pop up. Right? And this is especially true if you have notifications turned on. Right? It's like out of the corner of your eye, you see your phone, and then it rings and it pops up and it lights up, and boom, you got a new notification. And then you check on it. and then 5 minutes goes by, and then you put it away, and you put it down, and then you go back to work. It's like, this is just sort of like a no-brainer. It's like, if you want to have productive work done, you should not have your phone distract you. And certainly I see people all the time with their phones on the table, with their phones face up, with their notifications on, and it's like, why wouldn't you expect to be distracted by it? Why wouldn't you? You're literally putting a distracting thing on the table, face up, with its full abilities to distract you, and you're just leaving it there. And I'm just like, alright, well, you're gonna be distracted. So, do not do that. Alright. On the other hand, there are people that I know that have Macs that will have messages on their Macs, and it's like, that's basically the same thing, right? Because the entire thing with your phone is basically about the notifications, right? And if you have messages on your Mac, and you keep getting messages, you keep getting notifications on your Mac, that's literally the same thing, and it might actually be worse because you can't get rid of it. At least it's not an external object. Right? With your phone, you can just put it away. If you have notifications turned on and messages turned on your Mac, unless you like go into the app and like disable that stuff, it's just gonna keep on popping up on your screen, the screen that you're looking at to work. Right? It's like, these are no-brainers, right? If you want to work, turn off your notifications. And the reason why I'm so adamant about getting rid of all these notifications is because it's not just the time you spend on that distraction. It's whenever you get a notification, it brings you out of your work focus so that you focus on this one thing, right? All right, let's say you go on for 10 minutes, and then you put it down, and then you come back to work. But the thing is, you don't just waste 10 minutes. You waste more like 15 minutes because it takes you more time to get back into the work focus. Right? So you waste more time than you would expect. And this is not to even mention the amount of time that you spend distracted, just eyeballing your phone, waiting for something to happen, waiting for some notifications to appear. Like, this is absolutely something that you need to limit. Part 12 is notifications, and I've already gotten into some of this. The first thing you absolutely need to do is just disable all notifications. Like when you're working, you need to disable absolutely everything. Because when you're working, you are working. You are not here to talk to someone. You're not here to text someone. You're not here to be notified about an email. None of that. You are here to work. You're here to put in deep work, fully concentrated work. And any distraction, any notifications will disrupt that. And like I said, people with Macs, if you still have messages and notifications turned on, that did absolutely nothing. You put your phone away, okay, that did absolutely nothing because you can still get it. Right? I have a friend who told me that, oh, I tried putting my phone away, but it doesn't work. And I see that she has messages turned on her Mac when she's working, and so she gets messages when she's working. And I'm just thinking, yeah, no wonder that didn't work, because that did nothing. You're still getting notifications. The phone is simply a medium of where notifications come to you. If you have a different source, it doesn't matter. You're still getting notifications. The entire point is to limit your notifications with this. Part 13 is timing. It's when do you work? And I've already sort of gone into like food timing, like when you should eat in comparison to when you should work. And so the best time to do work, I think, truly is the morning. It's when no one else is awake. It's when everyone else is asleep. It's when you are undisturbed. And mornings work the best because most people don't like to wake up early, right? But I also think really any time where you aren't disrupted, where you aren't disturbed, also works really well. It's just basically the times when you aren't disturbed. And this allows you to get into deep work and get you that absolute concentration and into the flow. And to elaborate on the flow, I didn't really talk about how to get into the flow specifically. And specifically, there are 3 factors that allow you to get into the flow. And these are sufficient challenge and ability to rise up to that challenge. So the challenge isn't too hard, but it's not too easy. Right? You have the ability to get up to that level. Right? The second is clear goals and progress. Right? You have a goal or challenge you want to meet, and you can see that you're progressing to there. Right? You think you can get there, and you're progressing to there. Right? And the third is there is clear and immediate feedback. You know when you're progressing. You know when you're not. You know when you're failing. You know when you're succeeding. These are the 3 factors that allow you to get into the flow. And if you want to have the best work, do it. Find ways to incorporate these things into your work so that you can get the most out of it. Right? If you're studying for something, right, there's got to be sufficient challenge, and you have to be able to meet that challenge. Right? You have to have clear goals. All right, I'm going to study this material up to this point. I want to basically memorize everything up to that point. Right? That's the goal. And then you can basically monitor your progress with how much you memorize. And then you have clear immediate feedback. Okay, let's say you're doing flashcards. All right, I got this card wrong, all right, or I got it right. Or you have clear and immediate feedback. You got all 3, and you can get into the flow with that. Part 14 is location. So when you work, you want to choose the same spot to work. And so if you're working in your living room, in your house, in your apartment, or like whatever room it is, right? You want to choose one place specifically to do work. And if you don't have the space to do it, you can differentiate it in different ways. Basically, you just want to have a situation where you solely do work, and that's it. And a different situation where you do other things. And I'm reminded of Dr. K from Healthy Gamer when he was in medical school, and he had 2 desks, 1 laptop, and the 2 desks were right next to each other. And basically, when he was playing video games, he would just be on one desk, and then when it was time to work, he would just bring his laptop to the other desk and just roll over and do work. And the thing is, this is very effective because you're basically cordoning off places where you do certain things. You know, this desk is solely for playing things. This desk is solely for working. And by doing that, you get rid of any possibility to do the other, right? When I'm working, I can't be playing. When I'm playing, I can't be working, right? You give yourself boundaries so that this is the only thing that you can do at this certain area, at the certain time, right? And like I said, you don't need an entire separate room, although that definitely works better than just a separate desk. The more the difference there is, the better it will be. Part 15 is organization, and I believe it's best to have an organized workplace. Why? Because you're not going to end up distracted. So my workplace is very simple, so that I don't get distracted on this like one thing and then end up like micromanaging it for like 10 minutes and then go back to my work. It's basically all about limiting distractions. And so by making your desk super simple, you are better able to sustain your focus for hours on end. And certainly when you are in the mood of procrastination, your mind's going to be looking for things to procrastinate on, right? If you have like messy things, your mind's going to be telling you, you know, you should really clean that up, and let's just forget this task that we need to do. You know, you should just like clean that up, right? Yeah, just clean that up. And then you clean that up, and then you'll, like 30 minutes will pass by, and then you haven't even started on your frog, or your hardest activity of the day yet, right? So you want to make sure your area, your workplace area, your desk is clean so that you can't be distracted in that way. So part 16, the final part, is on music. I used to be able to work with music in my background. Like I used to be able to work with music, just listening to music. But looking back, I think that my concentration definitely wasn't as good. Like certainly there will be times when I get into the flow, but I think that's in spite of the music. I don't think the music actually helped me get into the flow. Rather, it was actually hindering me, because there were times when my concentration would like get into the flow, right? And then I would be engrossed in the lyrics, and then I just couldn't concentrate on the task at hand. So I just start thinking about the music and the lyrics and start singing it in my head. And I'm just like, what am I doing? You know? And so I think that it is still best if you work without music, if you just work with dead silence. Once again, so that you limit the amount of distractions that you get, so that you can work the best, so that you can get in the most deep work, so that you can get into the flow. And so to conclude this entire guide, the main points of being more productive are, first of all, getting your basic necessities, all right? Your sleep, your physical activity, all right, getting those in. Limiting your distractions. Distractions is such a big, important part of being productive that if you were to limit all your distractions in your environment, in your external circumstances, you could be like 4 to 10 times more productive. I'm just pulling that figure out of my ass, but like, you could be so much more productive if you don't have distractions. Another part is simply just how you structure things, right? Like, do you have a task list? What tasks do you do first? All that stuff. And finally, it's just mentality, right? You need to have the mentality to be productive. If you don't, if you have all these circumstances, but you don't have a drive to do it, to be productive, you're not going to be productive. Right? You're just not. So you need to have a why. You need to have a drive as to why you're being productive. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this guide, if you've learned something, drop a like, subscribe, turn on all those notifications, comment, and check out the 2 books I've written so far. One's on training and one's on nutrition. And I will see you next time.